There were so many good games this year. In fact, I bet you there's a game you love that probably flew under the radar in the midst of many, many, many other big games. And I assure you, that was the same case for a lot of us here personally at GameSpot. So much so that we wanted to take the opportunity to spotlight some games that maybe didn't get the light, maybe didn't get the same limelight as the big old top 10 that we made, but that doesn't mean that they're any less good than those ones. So in this video, we're gonna go over the games that we here at GameSpot love that maybe didn't make the top 10, but meant a lot to us. Take it away, folks.
Cult of the Lamb is a great marriage between dungeon crawler, life sim, farm sim, base builder, resource management, and even though the combat isn't the most deep, it completely changed how I feel about roguelike games. It was the first game to finally get me in that one more run, just one more run mode, even though most of my runs weren't even to get further in a dungeon. It was usually to get more resources for my villagers, or to get a new villager, or even most importantly, to get new decorations for my village. Because I spent way too much time in the decorating and base building and stuff like that. Sometimes just to zone out and listen to the music. Because let me tell you, the music in Cult of the Lamb slaps. This soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. So beyond the fact that it's super cute, it has a fun gameplay loop. It has a story that's just interesting enough but simple enough to not get too crazy. Then you also have a soundtrack that like you could just lo-fi beats that you could just listen to whenever you're doing whatever. I listen to it whenever I'm walking my dog, washing the dishes, anything. It's on streaming services. It's really that mix of genres that helped Cult of the Lamb really stand out amongst all of the other games I've played this year. You've got the cozy vibes, but you also have the creepy vibes. You have the relaxing and the action, and it all blends together to create this really cool stew of a game that just good soup. It may have not been the game of the year for GameSpot, but it was really special to me.
When I started playing Sonic Frontiers, it was kind of as a joke. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I had heard, good, bad, middling, all around. But to be honest, the more I play it, the more I love it. It is a combination of Death Stranding, Shadow of the Colossus, and Tony Hawk. I love just traversing the kind of silent, open world and unlocking the different grinding sessions that you can do to get from different area to different area on the island. The speed zones, I guess is what they're called, the digital zones are some of the best modern Sonic stages that we've had in a very long time. So the game is able to capture Sonic's speed in a way that I feel like no modern Sonic game has been able to do yet, especially when you level up all of your rings and it gives you that extra speed boost. It just, to me, it feels so good to just zoom around the open island with that in mind. And I think the moment that it clicked was I had that kind of Breath of the Wild moment of there was this giant flying Colossus type creature in the distance. And I looked at that and I was like, I can go fight that. I can go do, I can do that. And I ran as fast as I could and grinded on a rail and hit a bunch of rings and was flying all over the place and doing flips and tricks and all that stuff, and then fought that boss. I was like, I like this. This is good. I like this a lot. I was thinking about it and it feels like if the promises that Sonic 06 made and didn't deliver on are finally being rectified in Sonic Frontiers. And I'm really having a really, really, really good time with it. And it may not have made GameSpot's top 10, but it meant a lot to me and I'm really enjoying my time with it. So I wanted to give a little shout out to Sonic Frontiers.
So Evil West is a game that I can tell you very little about. I cannot tell you the name of the main character. I cannot tell you the name of the side character who you only see standing on top of rocks and shouting at you. I cannot tell you the name of the main character's dad. Don't ask me about the story because I don't know it. I've played it for maybe 6 hours, could not tell you the first thing about it. What I can tell you is if you hold the attack button, he does a little uppercut and the enemies go into the air. And if you keep holding it, he jumps into the air and does a Superman punch. If you do that in front of explosive barrels, you will automatically punch your enemy into the barrels and they will explode into blood and guts. That is one of the most satisfying things that you will be able to experience this year in video games. Evil West is like an action game from, I would say, 2008, built for the Xbox 360, maybe the PlayStation 3, and it is schlocky. It's like Gears of War, that kind of, I was gonna say B tier, but it's not B tier. Gears of War was a AAA game, but it's got that feeling, you know, that feeling of like, this is arcadey, it's kind of loose, it's kind of bloody. And as you keep playing, you realize that there's more mechanics being introduced. Each of them feels slightly broken. Each of them feels like they weren't balanced very well. And that's part of the fun. You get an electric leash, which means that you can pull enemies towards you and then automatically just start pummeling them. And while you're pummeling them, you're completely invincible. No one can do anything to you. And then you get this dash move, which if you hold the electric button, I don't know what that's all about, but it's an electric button. You will teleport towards your enemies, and then you can do that same flurry of punches, or you can hit them with a shotgun. It's ridiculous, but it feels like a goofy, dumb action game that you can play and immediately have fun with. Like, I guarantee you, play that game, it will be literally a minute before you are having fun. And then from that point on, you will keep having fun and it will keep giving you dumb things to do. And then by the time you're done, the game's over and you'll be like, you know what? I did not expect to have that much fun with this game, but I had a lot of fun with this game. And although it is not good enough to make it onto GameSpot's top 10 of the year, it is something that I think that people should give a shot. It's one of my favorite games of the year, Evil West. Still cannot tell you the main character's name, not even if I tried.
Rollerdrome is one of my favorite games of 2022, mainly because it's one of the best games you can play on the best device of 2022, which is the Steam Deck. So the game is a mashup between a third-person arena shooter and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and it's amazing how the game succeeds in both of those regards. It is not only fun to shoot things, but it is also really fun to just roll around. The amount of tricks you can do, the way that all the systems integrate with one another, so doing tricks will increase your ammo, so you can take out more enemies, and then also the challenges that are involved. Everything just works together so well that by the time you've played through a level of Rollerdrome, you have these additional challenges that are left that really push you, so you can get through the game pretty quickly. But if the game hooks its claws into you, which it probably will, there's so much left to pull out of it, even though you're still just kind of replaying the same levels over and over again. I love the variety of enemies and the way that they force you to approach different situations. There are enemies that are better at defending, so you have to use a certain type of weapon or you need to get around them. There's hidden things on the levels as well that also play into that replayability. It's just great after years and years of not getting a really good like skating game, even though this isn't, you know, a Tony Hawk skateboarding game. There hasn't been a really great game in this genre in a while, and you know, at the heart of it, it's just really fun to play if you were just skating around. The gun gameplay just adds another level. Rollerdrome is a combination of Quake and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and not only does it succeed at being both kinds of those games, but the elements of both feed into each other so well, it's kind of maddening that no one has made a game like this before. It's a game that you can pick up and play and have a 10-minute experience with, or you can spend literal hours going through and replaying all the levels to get all the different hidden items and try all the different difficulties and complete all the challenges. And so it's just simply about having a ton of fun, and that is why it is one of my personal games of the year in 2022.
As someone who's been playing games for their entire life, you can really notice when a developer goes the extra mile, when they put as many little details they can in to make something that they're truly passionate about. And for me, Cuphead, The Delicious Last Course, was that game. And it didn't just connect from an artistic standpoint. It's beautiful, everyone knows that about Cuphead, that's part of what made it successful, but even from a gameplay standpoint, As someone who's recently been delving into a little more game design and majored in it way back a long time ago, I really noticed a lot of those things a lot more, just how difficult it is to design something as tight as Cuphead and the delicious last course, and making something that's difficult but fair, and all of the different interesting ways that the bosses that you fight interact with your characters. It's just immaculate in how well designed it is from a gameplay standpoint. And that's just art aside. I mean, the art is its own topic when it comes to Cuphead, of how beautiful it is. And with the delicious last course, they took everything about the main game, but went the extra step. Every boss in the delicious last course has multiple phases that have so many moving parts and incredible animations in it. It's just stunning to behold and stunning to play. And every boss has different gameplay beats and moments where none of them blend together. None of them feel like you're repeating the same thing. Every moment in those boss fights, every phase feels like something completely new. It's just so incredibly well done, to the point where it made me go back and replay the original Cuphead and S-rank multiple missions, which I hadn't done before. So S-rank is the best that you can do in Cuphead. The delicious last course made me want to do that well in the DLC and do that well in the main game itself. It is that fantastic. It has a whole new end boss, which is incredible in its own right, and a new character you can play as, Miss Chalice, who at first took me a while to get used to, but once you do, she has her own unique moveset that makes her incredibly fun to play, and fun to play the original game with her as well. The delicious last course may not have made the GameSpot top 10, but for me, in my heart, it's a game that I will love and cherish, and I'm so glad I got to play this year. And if you haven't, I encourage you to, especially if you enjoy platform games, action games, bullet hell games, or any combination of those. Just give it a shot. I know it's difficult, but it is worth it.
This year, we got a parent's Call of Duty in Modern Warfare 2. And that might sound a little counterintuitive when you're talking about first-person shooters, but there's a lot of us who grew up playing games and love these kind of games, and we just don't have the time anymore for like the super fast, jumpy, slidey reactions that young kids have anymore. We can't waste a ton of time losing progress. We need those rewards to come, and we need to be able to walk away from this game when life calls, because that happens to you all the time as a parent. And this game, strangely enough, nailed a lot of those aspects of a Call of Duty game. It is a game that respects your time in so many different ways. Pretty much anything that you do gives you tons of rewards in that game. But more importantly, it's a game where you can actually think your way through the levels. So like even on the core maps, or on DMZ, which I'm really addicted to, in the previous Call of Duties, it got to the point where it was almost like Fortnite, like the most cracked out kid with the fastest slides and the biggest jumps and the fastest ADS would just kill you every time, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. This game made things more grounded. It has shorter time to kill. You can build things to counter those tactics, and you can also just use your brain. You can just memorize the map, and you can just sort of aim at the right places at the right times and anticipate them, and then watch them cry as they just get dropped. And that is something that I think parents enjoy very much with very little time to do these sort of things. Now, the other aspect of it is Warzone. And Warzone is something where you need to dedicate maybe 20 minutes to it, or 30 minutes at a time. And when that last circle is closing and one of your kids starts crying, or like somebody's punching somebody else in your house, or you got to feed a kid dinner, you need to be able to walk away from that match and not feel bad about it. And it's brilliant that they put together DMZ, because that's exactly what DMZ is. It's a mode where you can drop into a Warzone match, you can fight other players if you want to, you can basically just fight against the AI, you can rescue people like a good parent would, but you can also just leave when you need to. And the people who you leave behind can just ask other people to join them. Or if your friends leave you, you can just ask other people to join you. Modern Warfare 2 might not have made GameSpot's top 10 list, but as a parent, it is hands down one of my favorite games this year when I need to play and then I need to run because something happened with my kid, somebody pooped their pants, somebody needs to eat, or I just need to go do homework with my child. So thank you, Call of Duty.
So Potionomics is this darling little indie game where you play as this potion maker who's new to the town and you have to meet everyone. So you're talking to people, you're learning new bartering strategies of how to like sell your potions and whatnot. And as you're learning these new strategies, they are unlocked as cards that you can just slide into your deck. So that when you do brew your potions, when you are trying to sell these potions to your customers who are coming in, you have to play these random cards and you have to like play them in a way where you can get the most profit possible. You're trying to like force people to give you a little bit more money, to ignore the defects in the potion that you've crafted. And you're trying to get the most money as possible before their patience runs out and they just leave the store entirely. And that alone is one of my like favorite things to do. Like I have so much time invested into Potionomics already. But on top of that, Potionomics is also like this visual novel like dating sim. And everyone in this game is really cute. They're all smoochable, from the burly walrus dude to the like satyr girl with a prosthetic made of wood to Mint, who's this like cute little knight who's trying to be an adventurer, like from like a D&D campaign like type thing. Like she's like a starting adventurer and she comes to you asking for potions and advice on how to go out into the world, and you can smooch all of them, you can romance whoever you want, and I love it so much. It's my game of the year. Even if it didn't make top 10 of GameSpot, it's a game that you really should be playing if you haven't already.
When it comes to horror games, I have a very hard time playing them. I am easily startled, easily scared. It takes a lot for me to commit to playing them because I am a weenie about them. That being said, the second that I saw Signalis' art, I knew that I needed to play it. It just immediately drew me in and I was like, okay, I can suck it up to get through this game. And I'm glad that I did because it is such a cool game. And not just in the style of it too, it also has substance. It feels a lot like this ode to these classic PlayStation 1 games, right? Like the old Resident Evil games or Silent Hill, in that it kind of just throws you into it with, you know, little explanation and you're just kind of forced to fight for your life, quite literally. I think that the art and the sound design in that game are phenomenal. It really sticks to this particular vibe and aesthetic that it wants you to take away from the experience. It uses all of these like bright reds and like this kind of CRTV, like wavelengthy, you know, filter over a lot of it. It harkens back to that kind of time period, right? Of like, you know, the late 90s PlayStation games beautifully. It's a really fantastic love letter to these games, but it also takes them and transforms them into something for modern day in modern players. I think that overall, as you play Signalis, it does a really good job of empowering you as a player. When you solve all of these different puzzles that it throws at you and wade through these hallways of these, you know, alien life forms that keep coming back to life. So it's like you never get out of that tension. I think it does a really good job of making you feel like you've accomplished something, as if you are kind of living through that story, living through that struggle, in a way that, you know, horror games tend to do, but to do it so artistically and so beautifully is really an impressive feat. And that's why, even though it might not be one of GameSpot's top 10 games of the year, Signalis is definitely worth playing in 2022.
One of my favorite co-op games of the last decade is Overcooked. I think that game is just so brilliant in the way it encourages cooperation between the players as you're trying to cook these meals. So when I saw this game called PlateUp, I was like, oh, okay, it's an Overcooked clone. That's cool. Maybe I'll check it out. What I wasn't expecting is a game that takes the like base ideas of Overcooked and then like completely evolves it, and it ends up becoming a very different experience that I found myself completely addicted to, and me and my partner ended up putting 30 plus hours into it. Take Overcooked and you turn it into a roguelike. You and your partner now have to run a restaurant, and so every day you have to manage certain aspects of it. You essentially need to assign yourself roles. So you could say, all right, I'm gonna be the waiter, my partner's gonna be the chef, and they're gonna be in the kitchen in the back, and I'm gonna be the ones bringing the customers in, asking them their orders and serving them. Layout of the building is randomized, that's part of the roguelike element, but then you get to take like, you know, the tables, and you get to take the kitchen appliances, you get to move them around. And then also every day you are given a series of blueprints that are randomized that can potentially improve your restaurant. So, oh, hey, now we got a dishwasher, or we got a improved burner. You go through each day and it gets harder and harder and harder. You have to strategize where are your deficiencies and okay, the kitchen's going fine, but I'm getting absolutely swamped by the amount of tables. So we need to try and get more tables. We need to try and upgrade the tables and pray to the RNG gods that we get a good table that we need and we don't get like a shit roll because it's a roguelike, of course. Making it random, it can add a level of frustration, but it also adds just like so much more variety, and you find yourself like being like, no, one more run. This is the one, we're gonna do it. It's a game that I don't think that many people know of. You know, that's probably why it didn't end up in GameSpot's top 10 of 2022, but it's a game that meant a lot to me and my partner personally in the 30 plus hours we put into it. So it's certainly one of my favorite games of the year.
I know what all of you are thinking out there. PowerWash Simulator? You want to talk about PowerWash Simulator? Yes, I do. I am excited to talk about PowerWash Simulator. It is freaking amazing. When we talk about video games, we tend to like have a leaning towards discussing big moments and epic journeys and amazing gameplay that just knocked our socks off. And that's all definitely worth talking about. But I think we forget how important it is to have games that allow us to sort of process a lot of the emotions that we're feeling in the world right now. And one of the feelings that I feel a lot of the time when I look out in the horrible world that we live in right at the moment is anxiety. I feel a lot of deep anxiety about the world, and one of the things that I go to video games for is to help me process those emotions in a really healthy way. And I am not joking about this. PowerWash Simulator was one of those games that really helped me process a lot of my anxiety this year. I would sometimes just sit down at the end of the day feeling like really nervous and worried about all the things that I had to deal with, and I would just put on PowerWash Simulator and just start cleaning off a fire truck or like a fantasy like shoe house, and I don't know, it brought me a sense of relaxation and almost meditation in a way that I actually legitimately do think is deeply valuable today. We don't really give ourselves enough time to just sit and be and take comfort in just making things clean, like making things just nice and presentable. And I think that that's honestly kind of just, I don't know, I found it really rewarding, and I found it actually really helpful this year. And for me, I think PowerWash Simulator definitely has to go as one of my favorite games this year, specifically because it gave me that valuable moment that I don't think I would have gotten any other way. I think any game that allows us just to take a moment and be with ourselves and think about ourselves is a really valuable experience. So while it may seem like, you know, kind of humorous to talk about PowerWash Simulator as a great game of the year, I think you'd be missing something if you didn't take value in what PowerWash Simulator as a game can give you. And that is why PowerWash Simulator is one of my favorite experiences and games this year.
Trying to explain Saturnalia is like trying to explain a nightmare I've had. It's like going through a convoluted environment that just never seems to end, with twisting halls and narrow corridors that goes in every single direction, and you can barely see anything that's in front of you, but you are just running at all times for your life nonstop. And that is really what Saturnalia is like. Saturnalia is a roguelike horror game set in a small town in the 80s, where you and a group of other characters basically realize that something's afoot, and you are going to be running for your life to escape. The thing that makes the game so terrifying is that the world is this convoluted mess, and once you think you figure out you've memorized it, it then gets deeper, and then you realize there's this whole other world you have to learn, and this whole other building you have to deal with. And all this is kind of to create this nightmarish feeling that you're not ever comfortable, despite how well you think you know the environment and how well you think you're traversing it while running away from a terrifying thing that you can barely see, that you always feel a little lost. And it's that feeling of, even when you think you figured it all out, there's something there around the corner, or at least it gives the feeling that something is there around the corner. There's so many horror games where it strips you of your ability to defend yourself. And on the other side of that are survival horrors where it gives you just enough to be able to think you can make your way out of a situation. And Saturnalia is this beautiful combination of the two where instead it's your ability to emotionally regulate yourself in extreme situations of stress. And it does so also by being a detective game. The entire time, just as convoluted as the world you explore are the clues in which you have to find around the world to be able to eventually escape with everyone alive. And there's also this one really cool element, just this thing that I'm obsessed with, that if one of the characters is taken by this entity you're running away from, it will follow the scream of that person through the world to the next character you can play, giving you an opportunity to track the scream and free that player. And it's just like this kind of marvelous way of taking a roguelike, but still like not making everything randomized. In fact, the only real roguelike element to it is that once, if all your characters are captured, then the entire world resets, and that's an absolute terrifying thing I don't want to have to deal with ever, because it already is a nightmare trying to traverse that place. Now, it's not a perfect game. In fact, it didn't make GameSpot's top 10, but it left an incredibly lasting impression on me. One that is as close to a nightmare as I'm willing to get close to, and a nightmare that I actually kind of enjoy reliving.
I've played a lot of games this year. Play a lot of games every year. And one of the things that I really, really appreciate is when a game just knows what it is and feels really good to play. And in Tinykin, they have all of these systems that come together, but also the fact that motion feels really good because you are this big. You are basically the size of an ant, and you are dropped, you're an astronaut, and you are dropped into a house that's kind of modeled from a house from the 90s, so it definitely has that Borrowers, that Toy Story kind of feel. You can't do much by yourself. And so what you do is you gather, and if you've played Pikmin, you will completely understand the core concept of this game. You gather these little creatures called Tinykin, and together they can break down obstacles for you, they can become little towers, they can make stairs for you, they can even run electrical currents around things. And then it is the mix of you interacting with everyday items in different ways, but it feels so good while you're doing it. So you can glide around, you glide around also in the air with a little bubble pack, but you also glide around on a bar of soap. It is difficult for me to get across how good that feels when you are in a massive open level and you know you have to go over here to collect something, you have to go over there to open this new thing, and you're just gliding around on bar soap. It feels so good. And Tinykin is so full of charm. The puzzles are kind of like the level of puzzles that I want to play on a Sunday afternoon. Like my head is not all there. I'm basically gearing up for the week. I just want to experience a very delightful, easy to play game. I want to complete puzzles. I want to collect things. I want to get that feeling of accomplishment. That's what Tinykin has in spades. It might not have been in GameSpot's top 10 games of the year list, but I absolutely adore Tinykin. It is one of my favorite games I played this year.
In many ways, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 feels like the culmination of Monolith Soft. It is massive, sprawling, ambitious. The combat is deep and varied. You can play as all the characters in your party, and you can change their class, and you can use a bunch of different moves and fight a bunch of different enemies across this incredibly detailed, vast world with a great story that pulls you along throughout the entire way. But I think what stands out most to me with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 are the characters. I mean, you spend 100+ hours exploring that world, getting to know these people, and what's cool is your party isn't just limited to your party. There's a bunch of heroes as well that also have these great storylines that interweave throughout the narrative and just create this incredible story with a bunch of twists and a bunch of memorable characters that's lifted up by some of the best combat that the series has ever had. I mean, the combat is hardwired in my head. Like, I constantly think about going back to that game and just fighting some of those bosses again, doing some of those more challenging dungeons that you can only find once you beat the game. So I don't want to spoil anything, but there is one character interaction in particular that happens pretty late in the game that really cemented it as one of my favorites of 2022. The way it introduced a specific character back into the fold, I thought was super powerful and really meaningful, especially you know, if you've put in 70, 80 hours to get to that moment, it was just kind of, I don't want to say worth it all because the entire journey was great, but that moment in particular will stick with me for a very long time. It is the most special game for me of this year.
And there you have it. Now, maybe a game that you love didn't make this list, but hey, now's a good opportunity to put them in the comments because we always need games to play. With that being said, enjoy what you enjoy. Just go find those games you love. Don't care if they make the big old list. Just love it. Love the medium as it's meant to be loved by all of us. Okay, till next time, see you later.